Hello everybody, welcome to this little session put up on YouTube during the break. As always, go nice and easy, just starting off gently, let your weight settle, hips drop back, nice and loosen your hips, just turning from the middle of your body, using that movement to draw your shoulders and your arms around. One of the things that we're trying to do with Tai Chi is to break old habits of posture and movement. Those habits can be there for a lot of different reasons. Maybe you've had an injury or the work that you've done. I remember going into great detail with the postures with one group, and the woman saying to me afterwards, she came up to me and she said, well, I've had 3 babies. And she did this as she said it. So she had a baby on her hip and probably 1 or 2 hanging around her feet as well, for a significant part of her life. Often we do things like we carry a bag, we tend to carry it over the same shoulder. If you do a lot of work at a desk, you may feel a bit hunched over, and so on and so forth. So there's all sorts of reasons why we have the postural habits that we do, and our body's set into that, and our minds are set into that. So any change that we make should be done very carefully and gently. The other aspect to habits is in the mind. You know, we have this, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I need to do this. Lots of things going on at once. We put a virtue on being busy all the time. I'm not suggesting for a moment that we shouldn't be busy, but it's not the only way of doing things. And it's nice to have that quietness and that stillness as well as an option, shall we say. And it needn't be contradictory to that. So, you know, the other habit that we want to very gently break is that we've got to be busy, we've got to be busy, and we just chilly, we just encourage, guide our attention back into our body. We quite often find that actually doing that and everything that we associate with that in Tai Chi in terms of the body and the way that we move actually enables us to be much more efficient in our activities. So it's a myth that we've got to keep plugging away at things. Sometimes it's much better to take that break. And then raising your arms a little. Shake out. Sometimes taking a few minutes to do some exercises or to be quiet or to be still actually helps you in your business. So I remember a quote I came across attributed to great meditation master Thich Nhat Hanh, Vietnamese Zen Buddhist teacher, very well known and respected around the world, where he said that if you've got plenty of time and you've not got much going on and you feel like okay, you should sit and meditate for 20 minutes. And on the other hand, if you're really busy and you can't seem to squeeze everything in, you've got this long list of things to do, you should sit and meditate for 40 minutes, is what he said. So, and I know it's not always easy to find that time, but don't think of 20 minutes or half an hour or 40 minutes, think of 5 minutes. So we can usually find a few minutes, and you may find that you do more than 5 minutes, and you may find that actually that 5 or 10 minutes that you've taken has meant that you've got through the rest of the things that you have to do much better. I certainly found that in my life. So swaying in the river, it doesn't have to be complicated, and this is a nice little exercise. People sometimes worry about, oh, I can't remember the movements or whatever. I generally do these movements in a particular order, but it doesn't have to be in that order. Start with whatever movement you can remember, as simple as possible, and see what else arises in your mind for other movements. And it may be the order that I do it in, it may be something different, it's fine. It's the doing of it that's important. And then this time, pause a little bit, but let your hips drop back, and into rooting down. There are these two major stages, the expansion and the contraction. But in between the two, as it were, at the top and the bottom of the movement, there's just a slight sort of gathering in, the pausing, a bit like if you throw a ball up in the air. It seems to just hang in the air for the moment. Movement doesn't stop, but it reaches a kind of balance point, a pivot point, I suppose you could say. So that quietening, that stilling, is built into the system, especially when we go down and when we contract in. And we wait until we feel the push up. So rather than thinking, now I need to push up, sink down, let go in your hips, soften your knees. And after a while, you'll feel that your legs begin to just naturally push you up. Or maybe even so the ground beneath you will pushing you up. Now change to the wild goose. Tai Chi classics urge us to seek the stillness within the movement. And eventually we find that that idea of a meditative quietness, a quiet space, still space, is in no way contradictory to the idea of movement and action. And then changing. Notice that there's probably by now a sort of dialogue in your mind. Well, I must think this, I'm thinking this, notice this, I think this. And it may be about the exercises, maybe about what you're going to have for lunch or what you're doing tomorrow, or it may be, oh yes, I must remember to say about this exercise and to make notes on this, or it could be lots of things. When you notice that, just gently bring your attention back to the actual movement, the experience of the movement. Now, in sequence, so going to rooting down. This will help you to just focus your attention a little bit more. Move by move, moment by moment. We want to be in touch with what we're doing. Anything that you think that's really important will stay. You don't have to think about it now. Just enjoy the stillness within the movement. One more round. dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And again, it's a slow transition in that moment of, I suppose, what you could describe as almost pausing as your hand reaches the bottom of the movement. That's when your attention will come across to the other side. One more on each side. And then change. Again, that slight pause. And in the end, it's not something that you have to define. You don't sit there and think, right, I pause, and then it's just a naturally occurring settling. It doesn't even seem to stop the movement. It's not like the movement stops, it just slows down. Observing the movements in your body, noting whether you have stepped back. Are you now stiffening up in your shoulders, or you lost the posture? Just regaining the posture, regaining the quality of the movement, very slowly and gently. And then changing. Another lovely phrase from the Tai Chi classics really sums up, I think, the qualities that I'm trying to get across to you today, where it says that we should be still as a mountain, but move like a great river. And then add in the turn. Change sides. And then at the turn, and then rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. One more time. And stand. So these little phrases, seek the stillness within the movement and so on and so forth, they come off the tongue very easily, but they're not so easy to bring into practice. Everything seems to work against that. We have this habit of being busy. There's nothing wrong with being active, but it's just giving ourselves an alternative. So what we just did there was basically 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. It could be longer. It's great if you've got longer, but you might not have time. You might be off somewhere. You might decide to do just 2 or 3 different exercises, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Another thing that I've done with you sometimes in the past is I've counted the exercises. You do 4 of each or 6 of each or something like that. And so you get to be able to say, well, I can take 10 minutes. You don't necessarily want to take an unbounded amount of time. That can be quite difficult. So, well, I've got to get lunch. I've got to do this. I've got to pick up the kids, or whatever it is you have to do. Sometimes it's easy to say, right, I'm going to take 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, you can work out, well, I can do 6 exercises, 4 of each or something like that. Obviously, it's great if you can spend more time, and those times when you can spend more time. But these are ways to make the practice useful to you in your life. We don't want it just to be something that we do when we're on holiday, when we've got time, when we're not too busy with other things. We want it to become part of our lives. So, still in the parallel stance, going to do the little exercise I've been doing with a few of you recently. You imagine the round pillars beside you, hands are slightly in front, and just rotate, feel your chest opening, sliding your hands around the pillars, and then forwards. So you want to feel the rotation all the way down through your arm, into your fingertips. If you imagine your hands are on these pillars, like these concrete pillars you get in car parks, you can imagine there's a little bit of resistance to your hands moving. And then into hitting the ball in front of the shoulder. And here, both arms rotate in the same way. One hand is palm up, the other is palm down. At this point, they change. And that rotation should be all the way through your arm, from your shoulder, felt in the chest and your upper back. One more time. And then go into cow gazes at the moon. No rotation here, but you may still feel it's still there, the connection into the chest, ribs and upper back. Arms dropping down in the middle here. Again, that sort of momentary, maybe even just non-existent, but a feeling of pausing. One more time on each side. Just trying to keep the flow going. Come to the middle here. And keep your weight more in the middle now. Swinging arms. And again, we can often get a little bit confused with these exercises. Oh, what's happening with the arms? Is it going up or down, forwards or backwards, left or right? But actually, arms follow our shoulders, and we renew that connection here. So if or when we get confused and we find ourselves starting to flap a little bit in the arms, we get here, so, oh, I don't know what to do now. Yes, you do. You come back to this. And then you move out. Come back to this. And again, this is reflected in the rhythm of the movement. Yin to yang to yin to yang. And that same connection between your arms and your upper body, chest, ribs, upper back, helping to move the arms for you. So if you can really work with those connections, it won't be a strain to bring your arms up. The effort, the load will be spread through your whole body in the end. So obviously your legs, your hips are part of the movement. And then let your hands drop down or swing around. and stand for a moment. Shake your legs out. So we learn to keep that quality of stillness within the movement all the time. And it has some very practical elements. The very act of sinking your hips or rooting down becomes an element of meditation as well, a quieting of your mind when things are getting on top of you. It needn't, in a way, it sounds strange, but it needn't sort of take any time. It's just a natural part of how we start to do things in Tai Chi. So have one foot forwards. It can be useful just to identify those points though. And one of the things that I like to think about in these terms is the point of arrival in one leg or another. So rather than forwards and backwards, sometimes I think I go back and I get a feeling of sinking. I'm not necessarily physically lowering my hips anymore. There may be a bit of that. But actually it's more about just being there properly, rather than, oh, I've got to be here, I've got to be there, I've got to be there. And again, you know, there's a strong urge that says that that's what we should be doing. But again, my experience is we get more done when we do take that time. So this development of of new habits, more positive habits, is very much part and parcel of the whole practice. Habits physically, habits mentally. And then raising your toes and your heel. So we find, now beginning to step in, that habit that we develop of pausing, as you might call it, or centering, or rooting, whatever label you care to put on it, however you're experiencing, actually, it's helping us to walk. It's helping us to take the step. And then on the other side. Raising your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Planting the foot. and then take a couple of steps forwards or backwards, depending on what space you have. And going back. So again, I'm not trying to suggest by any means that being active is a bad thing and that we shouldn't be active in our lives. In fact, Tai Chi is a very dynamic art. But rather the two things that we often think are almost in opposition to themselves, which is either we're busy and active or else we're still and calm. Actually, they're not opposites at all. They're actually two sides of the same process in Tai Chi terms. One of the physical areas that we can bring our attention to notice that stillness is the center part of the body, the area between hips and waist. This is an area that is often described as being like the hub of a wheel. And if you've got a wheel on a bicycle, you spin the wheel around, the hub actually stays still. It's locked into the frame of the wheel. In fact, if it's not locked into the frame of the wheel, it's not going to carry on moving for very long, and could be quite difficult because your wheel will fall off your bike. So it's actually the stillness is actually part of what makes the movement, the continual movement, possible in that sense. And so this is an important element, an important lesson in Tai Chi. So let's do pigeon spreads its wings. And remember, you sink down and you feel the expansion up through your body. And then you sink back, and again, as you sink down, you begin to feel the counter movement to that, the pushing upwards. So it's taking the time to feel that actually makes it possible to move without straining in the upper part of your body. And then hands drop down. Fisherman cast a net. Pushing a wave. One more time. Turn the front foot out, tilt forward, scoop in the sea, looking at the sky. One more time. And shake out. And then have your other foot forwards. Remember, settle back, sink, feel the push forwards, sink into the front leg, feel the push up. Fisherman cast the net. One more time. And pushing the wave. And then scoop in the sea and looking at the sky. Good. And move your feet back out. Another practical thing that I think this idea of cultivating the stillness, not thinking about stillness, not thinking, oh, I must be still, or I must breathe slowly, or whatever, but the actual physical experience of that, bringing your attention into your body, is that it can be really helpful for helping us to deal with complex situations. I'm sure you must have done this. You've lost your keys, and in the end you're looking frantic, and in the end you just have to sit down and think, be quiet and calm. When did I last have? They must be in that jacket pocket, and so on and so on. This constant kind of grasping after things really isn't very helpful in most circumstances. And some of it comes from adrenaline. So we've lost the keys, we're late, we've got to get somewhere. Oh God, how am I going to do this? The adrenaline kicks in at that point. You don't need the adrenaline. Adrenaline has very limited use. So we can cut through that. We can come back to something quieter. And we see that very much, I think, in some of the more complex movements that we do in Tai Chi. We see it in Tai Chi forms, and everybody who's had the experience of trying to learn a Tai Chi form has had those moments of, I can't remember, what do I do now? I can't remember what's coming next, blah, blah. Even very experienced people get that. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh yeah, that's just me, believe me, it isn't. I have literally seen Chinese grandmasters forget what they're supposed to be doing next. It's about being human. It's not about that not happening. It's about how we actually respond to that. Chinese masters just laugh and carry on. They don't get frantic like we do. So when we do a movement like, say, Wind Blows the Willows, moving into Dragonfly skims the water, and we have all these complexities and things like that. Oh, I'm never going to be able to do this, or we start flapping around. But think about it. When we did this, I pointed out that this is the central point. So if you get lost doing Wind Blows the Willows, but here is where you need to come. And we find that through every single part of the movement, but we find it very particularly here, halfway through. This is the start and the finishing point. Then we move out. Then we move back. This is where we find that quietness, that stillness. Then we carry on moving, and so on and so forth. So watch as you go through that point, and then try and maintain it, because it's not just here that we want to find it. When we come into this leg, settle. And when you settle, you'll find, oh, I can take the step more easily. And when you can settle, you find not only can you take the step, but maybe you can raise the leg. Maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, whatever. The stillness is the key to doing that. So have your left foot forwards and start with Wind Blows the Willows. Feel that? Settling down in the center of the movement, and then in the front leg, then in the center, then in the back leg. But notice how easily and quickly we lose that. Again, this is true for everybody. So we often think, well, this is happening to me, but the more I talk to people, the more I get to know about Tai Chi, the more experienced people I get to be able to have the privilege of talking to about it. They'll all go, oh yeah, that happens all the time. It's not just you. And then when you're ready, you begin to raise your heels, your toes. As always, just take this to whatever point in the exercise you're comfortable with. Don't strain. And remember, if you're thinking, well, I'd quite like to do that next bit, the first thing you need to do is to seek that stillness. And then we can step in. Remember, you just do a simple step. Do that a few times. And then if you wish, you can just raise the foot a little bit. And move your feet down. Practicing having a go at the more difficult exercises actually is a way of really focusing our attention very deeply. If you can do this, then I'm going to have to find something more difficult for you to do, because it's often the stuff that we can't do that is the most beneficial. So if you can't do it, that doesn't mean that you're not benefiting from it. So, and I've had stuff coming back from the students I've said to you about before, which really kind of seemed to confirm that for me. So don't feel you think, oh, it's like, keep working at it. And the benefit is in the mind and really in the cultivation of this focused stillness that we're talking about. So your right foot forwards. And we'll take this into the actual stepping, depending on whether you've got room in front of you or behind, you can step forwards or backwards. But first of all, fixed step, the wind blows the willows. Using your toes and your heel. Step in. And then, again, if you're comfortable with this, take a few steps forwards or backwards. I'm going to go forwards again now. And bring your feet down. Good. So rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder, your arm. Other side. Once you're back. This too is a very useful exercise for just settling yourself. Very simple, easy to remember, no particular order to the movement. Complicated here. Your hips, and then the legs. Light on your belly. Well, I hope that was useful to you. There's nothing else. Just remember, try and just cultivate these more positive habits of movement and in our mind. We'll be back from the 21st onwards with our usual program. It's probably going to be a couple of sort of physical classes starting up through September and October time as well. Quite complicated, but you'll be getting details of all of those. You would already by now have had some of the details of that. So we look forward to seeing you one way or another in a week or so's time. Around about the 21st of September, depending on when you're watching this, of course. But in the meantime, embrace tiger, return to mountain. Once again, this idea of coming back. So sinking down, embrace tiger, return to the mountain. And small. And stand. Thank you very much for watching.